Next up, we have Edwin EVERHAM, professor in the Department of Marine and Ecological Sciences at Florida Gulf Coast University, whose research explores how ecosystems respond to disturbance events, both natural and man-made. Edwin, please.
Thank you, Sam. Yeah, I was the last late addition to the panel. I told Bill if he wanted me to, I could wear a bag over my head and I could be the unknown scientist. But it was opportunistic. I was in this part of the world a month ago for a memorial celebration of one of our colleagues who passed away a year ago. His family for generations has owned a farm off of US 2 between here and Toledo. And sorry, I'm choking up a little bit. In John's last year of his life, he worked hard with his family to get 120 acres of their farm converted into a wetland. And they had a 1-year anniversary of his death, and that we all got together on the marsh and got to tour it. I got to take off my shoes and walk through John's marsh. So it's possible some of you guys helped. This was the Herman family off of, like I said, off of US 2, about halfway between here and Toledo. So I was talking with Bill about that. He mentioned this. I was able to come back up, so I was really excited to be able to be here and see this landscape again. Sam mentioned I study change in ecosystems as the result of disturbances. I study a lot of different taxa, a lot of different abiotic gradients, and lately in South Florida, I've been looking at restoration as a disturbance. And I want you to understand that not as a pejorative, but if you think about the idea of you've got a broken limb and the doctor has to reset it and cast it, there's pain associated with that. And trying to understand how the systems reorganize themselves after our intervention to restoration, I'm hoping helps guide more effective means for restoration. So that's sort of the connections. And I got 5 observations that I'll do. I think I can do them in 2.5 minutes. Okay. All right, the first is harmful algal blooms are everywhere and getting worse. It appears that our species has difficulty dealing with its crap, literally and metaphorically. And I want to make sure, Dr. Lee, I don't think I got a chance to ask this question, so since I'm on the panel, I'll throw in for the first question. If you could take a couple of minutes to talk about the state of the art of our understanding of the toxins associated with blue-green algae and the impact on neurological diseases like ALS. You know, what do we know about that? Second observation, I found it really interesting as a person who studies irregular events, the theme of climate change that's flowing through all this. And Dr. Kradunsky, that first slide that you showed that had all of those graphs, I was scared by it at first. And then when I realized what you were doing with that, I thought, wow, I could teach a whole class, a whole course on that one slide. It was really powerful to see both the numbers of changes that the globe are facing and the nature of the change of those changes. So for me, the takeaway message is the world is changing and the nature of change is changing. And that's going to make our jobs really hard as we go into the future. Bill made reference to ecology not being rocket science. I use that same phrase in my classes, but then I pause and say, it's much more complicated than that. So it isn't going to be easy. We got job security. So the third observation is that our landscapes, Florida and Ohio, and now I know Poland, all share equally striking pre-post development changes. Land use change was driven by modifying hydrology, and that resulted in significant wetland loss. And we're also going to be challenged by this idea of how much of the limited resources we put to the very efficient protecting and maintaining of the remnant wetlands as opposed to applying resources to restoring and creating new ones. This is going to be hard, and we're going to have to work on it. A piece of hope is that it was nice to discover that both Ohio and Florida now share new state governments that are allocating significant new resources to water issues. Yeah, about time. Bill showed you some slides of what happened with the red tide for us over the last couple of years. I've got some of my colleagues and fellow citizens mad because I'd say we might look back at those red tide events as a gift because it really woke everybody up to the reality that our economies are directly tied to whether or not we're good stewards of water resources. I thought it was really going to make a difference. The truth is that I think we spent too much time trying to figure out who to point fingers at, rather than to realize that we all share in the blame of what we're doing to our water supplies. And I think I'd like to see us move in that direction. I believe in democracy. I'm always hoping to find leaders who care more about doing the job than getting reelected. I've learned to live with disappointment. And I think as the top-down political system continues to fail us, we have to work hard on either bottom-up, grassroots, educating the people that are voting, the people that are making those decisions, or we begin to shift over to some new systems that we can use. And probably the best talk, or sorry, the most enlightening talk I saw was Sam's, that most of the time as an ecologist, when I'm interacting with economists, it's on this idea of trying to quantify ecosystem services. And I think the results are real, but they tend to be so large that we can't fit it into the market very effectively, and it sort of dead ends there. I very seldom see us working on how we can use the market as a force of change to move us towards a better solution. I'm really excited about the stuff that you're working on. We forget that economists and ecologists share the same root, oikos. We all care about the house. So I went over 2.5 minutes, didn't I?
No, you're good.
Okay. Oh my God, all right, I'll do this quick. So I said that the change of change is changing. You know, Bill, if somebody takes you up on that bet, was it 2029 that you said you could stop the harmful algal blooms? I hope they take you up on the bet. I hope that you're right. I fear that you would be wrong, because the problem is this landscape in 2029 will not be what it is today. And the climate today will not be what it is today. And the problem is we can't figure out how to accurately predict what those two things are going to look like. And so we really have to, this is a little self-serving, but I heard this theme early on, we've really got to remember to allocate resources to monitoring and adaptive management. We've got to figure out what works where and how we can change it to make it work more effectively. And the last thing is, I was really, really excited to hear every single speaker talk about these complicated issues with a sense of hope and a vision of solutions. We got to do that more often when we're talking to the public. Can't just scare them all the time. We got to tell them we can move to a better future.
All right. Thanks very much, Edwin. And a couple of really interesting points I think I heard. Number one, yes, thank you for your, for the comments on the stuff I've been talking about. It reminded me of a quote by Bill McDonough, the guy who wrote Cradle to Cradle. And he says the challenge we face is one of externalities, and that if we can get the costs right, the market and innovation will solve everything, right? If we got the price and cost of phosphorus dialed in so that innovators could look and say, I can engineer or design that out of the product, they would do so, and we wouldn't need a regulatory hammer to do it, right? He describes a regulation as a signal of a design failure, right? And the second thing he said, it talked about the impact of humans, that it made me think about the importance of getting the baseline right. You know, what is the baseline, right? Is it pre-Columbian, before Europeans got here, or is it some point after the Second World War, where, you know, suburbia and development really started to set its pace, or is it like 1990 where we're baselining against carbon and that sort of thing? But really understanding what's the right baseline, and I think you're all over that. So thank you.